Welcome to my channel. Subscribe and enjoy my new stories every day. The moment I saw that text message, everything changed. Emma had left her phone on the counter as she hurried off to work, her usual busy self, rushing out the door like she always did. I was just finishing my coffee when it buzzed. A simple vibration, nothing unusual, but something about it caught my attention. Maybe it was the way she had been acting recently, distant, distracted, and always on her phone. I wasn't the suspicious type, but when a man notices that his wife isn't quite herself, it's hard to ignore. I glanced at the screen without thinking, more out of habit than any real intention of prying. But when I saw the name flash across it, Brad, something inside me shifted. I'd heard the name before. Brad from the office, she had said, some guy she worked with. No big deal. But the message was what got me, can't wait to see you tonight, babe. My heart sank. I stared at the phone for a long moment, the words burning into my brain. I wanted to believe it was innocent, that there was some logical explanation. But deep down, I knew. The late nights at work, the sudden business trips, her growing coldness toward me, it all started to make sense. I sat there in the quiet of our kitchen, the morning light filtering in through the window, feeling like my world had just cracked open. Emma and I had been married for 10 years. We had 2 kids, a beautiful home, everything we had worked for together. And now, with one message, it all felt like a lie. I put the phone back down, my hands trembling slightly. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to storm into her office, confront her, demand answers. But another part of me, a colder, more calculating part, told me to wait. To watch. If she was having an affair, I needed to be smart about this. Over the next few days, I started paying more attention. I watched her closely, took note of the little things I had been ignoring before. The way she would smile at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. The hurried phone calls she would take in the other room. The nights she came home late, smelling of perfume that wasn't hers. It became clear that something was going on, but I didn't have solid proof. Not yet. And I wasn't about to confront her without it. So, I started digging. First, I went through her phone. She wasn't stupid, she had deleted most of her messages with Brad. But people always leave traces, no matter how careful they are. I found a few stray messages, nothing explicit, but enough to raise more red flags. Then I checked our phone bill online. Sure enough, there were dozens of calls and texts to a number I didn't recognize, Brad's number. My stomach twisted as I scrolled through the bill. It wasn't just a few texts here and there. It was constant. Late at night, early in the morning, even while we were on vacation with the kids. How had I not noticed this before? How had I let it get this far? Next, I started tracking her movements. I knew when she was supposed to be at work, so I would casually text her during the day, asking how things were going. She always had an answer, meetings, client calls, deadlines. But sometimes, I'd drive by her office on my lunch break, just to see. And more often than not, her car wasn't there. That's when I knew for sure. But still, I waited. I needed more. I needed undeniable proof. Something that would give me the upper hand when the time came. A week later, I got it. She had another late night at work scheduled, but this time, I followed her. I felt ridiculous, like some jealous husband in a bad movie, but I had to know. I kept my distance as she drove across town, not to the office but to a hotel. My heart pounded as I watched her park, get out, and walk inside. 10 minutes later, Brad pulled up. I sat there in the car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I wanted to charge into that hotel and tear the place apart, but I forced myself to stay calm. This was it. The proof I needed. But my revenge wasn't going to be some impulsive outburst. No, it had to be perfect. I took out my phone and snapped a few pictures of them entering the hotel together. Then I drove home, my mind racing with what I would do next. When Emma came home that night, she acted like nothing was wrong. She kissed me on the cheek, asked how my day was, and sat down at the dinner table with the kids as if she hadn't just spent the last few hours with another man. I watched her closely, marveling at how easily she lied, how she slipped into our family routine like everything was normal. It made me sick. But I played along, pretending I hadn't just uncovered her secret. The next day, I started putting my plan into motion. First, I contacted a lawyer. I didn't want a messy divorce, but I needed to protect myself, and the kids, before Emma could try to spin things in her favor. The lawyer advised me to gather as much evidence as possible, so I continued to track her movements, taking note of every time she saw Brad, every lie she told me. Then, I started packing. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of a confrontation until I was ready, but I wasn't going to stick around and let her make a fool of me. So, while she was at work, I began quietly moving my things into storage, piece by piece, until all that was left were the essentials. I could feel the tension building inside me as the days went on. Every time I looked at Emma, I had to fight the urge to explode, to scream at her for what she had done to our family. But I kept it together. I had a plan, and I wasn't going to let her ruin it by reacting too soon. Finally, the day came. She had another work dinner scheduled, and I knew exactly where she was going. So I waited until she left, then started packing up her things. I filled trash bags with her clothes, her shoes, everything she owned, and dumped them on the front lawn. I wasn't going to let her walk back into this house like nothing had happened. When she came home and saw the bags, the look on her face was priceless. For the first time, she looked caught. Trapped. Like the world she had been so carefully balancing had finally come crashing down around her. "Mark, what the hell is this?" she demanded, standing in the doorway, her eyes wide with shock. "Oh, this?" I said, my voice calm. "This is your new reality." I handed her the phone, still open to the pictures I had taken of her and Brad at the hotel. Her face went pale as she scrolled through them, her hands shaking. "I know everything, Emma," I said. "I know about Brad. I know about the lies. And I know that you've been cheating on me for months. So, pack your bags and get out." Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I thought she might actually start begging for forgiveness. But instead, she tried to deny it, to explain it away. "It's not what you think, Mark," she stammered. "I can explain." "Don't bother," I cut her off. "I'm done. You've been lying to me for months, and I'm not going to let you do it anymore. The divorce papers are already filed. You can keep Brad, but you're not keeping the house, and you sure as hell aren't keeping the kids." I watched as the tears streamed down her face, her shoulders slumping in defeat. For the first time, she realized that I wasn't going to forgive her, that there was no going back. And as she walked away, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. Emma was gone for the weekend. It was strange, after 10 years of marriage, to have the house so quiet, so empty. The kids were with her parents for a few days, part of our routine when Emma had work trips. Of course, I now knew those trips weren't for work. But at that moment, I was grateful for the quiet. It gave me time to think, to prepare for what was coming next. I sat in the living room, looking around at the remnants of our life together. The pictures on the walls, the souvenirs from vacations, the furniture we'd picked out together. It all felt like a museum of a life that was already over. Every object in the house was now tainted, connected to memories I couldn't trust anymore. I had spent years building this life with her. I had trusted her, loved her, been a good husband and father. And in return, she had lied to me. I could still hear her rehearsed voice from that morning, telling me she was going out after work, that she wouldn't be back until the next day. Calm. Confident. Like it was just another day. But this wasn't just another day. It was the day everything changed. I had taken my time gathering the evidence. The photos, the phone records, the hotel receipts, all neatly organized in a folder that now sat on the coffee table in front of me. I had everything I needed. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about taking control. If Emma thought she could continue living in this fantasy where she played me for a fool, she was in for a rude awakening. I reached for my phone and called my lawyer. We had spoken before, briefly, about the logistics of a divorce, but now it was time to move forward. I wasn't going to let Emma twist this situation in her favor. The kids were my priority, and I wasn't going to let her drag them through the mud with her lies. "Mark, good to hear from you," my lawyer, Karen, said when she answered. "Are you ready to proceed?" "Yeah," I replied, my voice steady. "I'm ready. I've got everything you asked for, photos, phone records, everything. She won't have a leg to stand on." Karen sighed, a sound that told me she'd seen this kind of thing too many times. "Good. That will make things easier. But be prepared, these cases can get messy, especially with kids involved. Are you sure you're ready for that?" I glanced at the photos on the coffee table again, a picture of Emma smiling with the kids on our last family vacation. A vacation where she had been texting Brad the entire time, sneaking off to make phone calls while I played with the kids at the beach. "I'm ready," I said firmly. "I need to protect my kids. She's been lying to them, too." Karen paused for a moment before speaking again. "All right, we'll get the paperwork started. Have you told her yet?" "Not yet," I admitted. "She's out for the weekend. I'm planning to confront her when she gets back." "Make sure you're calm when you do," Karen advised. "These situations can escalate quickly. You need to stay in control. Don't let her manipulate you or turn this around." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "I'll stay calm." "Thanks, Karen." We hung up, and I stared at the folder again, running through the conversation I would have with Emma in my mind. It would be tempting to explode, to let all the anger and betrayal spill out in a fury. But that's what she would expect. No, I needed to stay cold. Calculated. She didn't deserve my anger. She didn't deserve anything from me. The next day, I took another step toward regaining control. I called a moving company to come the following week to take Emma's things out of the house. Everything she owned was going into storage, where it would stay until she found a place to live. She wasn't going to get the house. I'd make sure of that. In the meantime, I packed her clothes into more bags, the process becoming easier as the minutes ticked by. With each item I stuffed into a trash bag, I felt lighter. The burden of her deceit, her lies, her betrayal was slowly lifting from my shoulders. The bags piled up by the door like the discarded remnants of a life I no longer wanted. I knew Emma would be shocked when she walked through the door and saw everything packed up. She probably thought she could manipulate me, play the role of the guilty wife who made a mistake and just needed forgiveness. But I wasn't going to play that game. I had the upper hand, and I intended to keep it. When everything was packed, I sat on the edge of the bed we had shared for years, staring at the empty space where her things used to be. It felt surreal. Part of me still couldn't believe this was happening. Just a few weeks ago, I had thought our life was perfect, that we were happy. How had I been so blind? I reached for my phone again and pulled up the messages between Emma and Brad. I had saved them all, even the ones she thought she had deleted. They were disgusting. The way she talked to him, the way she had lied to me so effortlessly, it made me sick to my stomach. I scrolled through them, my anger simmering just below the surface. "I can't wait to see you tonight. I'll tell Mark I'm working late again. You were amazing last night, baby. I wish I could stay with you forever." The words blurred as my vision clouded with rage. How could she do this to me? To us? To our kids? I slammed the phone down on the bed, trying to control the fury building inside me. I knew what I had to do next. It was time to confront Brad. I didn't know much about him, other than what Emma had told me. He was a coworker, divorced, no kids. He worked in the same department as Emma, which meant I could find him easily. I wanted to see the man who had ruined my marriage, who had taken what was mine without a second thought. I got dressed and drove to their office, my mind racing the whole time. I didn't know what I would say or do when I saw him, but I needed to see his face. I needed to look him in the eye and make him understand the damage he had caused. When I arrived at the office building, I parked across the street and waited. I didn't know what time Brad would be leaving, but I was willing to wait as long as it took. I wasn't leaving until I saw him. It didn't take long. About an hour later, I saw Emma's car pull into the lot. She was back early from her work trip, which was no surprise. But she wasn't alone. Brad was with her, sitting in the passenger seat like he belonged there. I clenched the steering wheel, my knuckles white as I watched them get out of the car. They were laughing, completely oblivious to the fact that I was watching them. Emma reached over and touched his arm, a gesture so familiar, so intimate, it made me want to puke. I was out of the car before I could stop myself, walking across the street with purpose. I didn't care if they saw me now. In fact, I wanted them to. I wanted them to know that the game was over. As I approached, Brad looked up and froze, his smile fading as he realized who I was. Emma turned around, her face going pale the moment she saw me. "Mark, what are you doing here?" she stammered, taking a step back. I ignored her and walked right up to Brad, standing inches from his face. He was taller than me, but I didn't care. I wanted him to feel my presence, to understand that he had messed with the wrong man. "So you're Brad," I said, my voice low and steady. He swallowed, glancing nervously at Emma. "Look, man, I don't want any trouble." "You should have thought about that before you decided to sleep with my wife," I interrupted, my hands curling into fists. Emma stepped between us, her hands up in a placating gesture. "Mark, please, let's just talk about this." I took a step back, my eyes never leaving Brad's. "There's nothing to talk about, Emma. It's over." Brad tried to step away, but I blocked him, my voice dropping even lower. "If I ever see you near my wife or my kids again, you'll regret it." He nodded quickly, his face pale. "I got it, man. I'll stay away." I stared at him for a long moment before turning back to Emma. She was crying now, her face red and blotchy, but I felt nothing for her. Whatever love I had for her had died the moment I saw that text message. "I'll see you at home," I said coldly, and without another word, I walked away. As I drove back home, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. The confrontation had been intense, but I had remained in control. I had said what I needed to say, and now it was time to finish what I had started. When Emma came home later that night, she would find her things packed up and waiting for her. And she would finally understand that I wasn't the man she thought I was. I wasn't weak. I wasn't a fool. I was the man who was about to take everything away from her. By the time Emma walked through the door that evening, I was ready. I had spent the last few hours in a strange state of calm, as if the anger that had been raging inside me for weeks had finally burned out. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't even going to ask her why. I didn't need to. I had all the answers I needed. When she stepped inside and saw the bags lined up by the front door, her face fell. The calmness she had carried with her all these months was finally gone. She stood there, frozen, her eyes wide with disbelief as she took in the sight of her life packed up and ready to be thrown out. "Mark," her voice was small, fragile. She looked at me, pleading, but I had no sympathy left for her. "You should sit down," I said, my voice flat. I gestured to the living room, where I had set everything up for the inevitable confrontation. The folder with all the evidence was sitting on the coffee table, waiting for her. She hesitated but eventually walked over and sat down on the edge of the couch, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. I sat across from her, leaning back in my chair, studying her. This was the moment I had been preparing for, the moment I would confront her with everything I knew. I had played the part of the clueless husband long enough. Now it was time for the truth. "I know about Brad," I said, getting straight to the point. There was no need for small talk, no need to dance around the subject. She blinked, and I could see her mind racing, trying to come up with some explanation, some way to salvage the situation. But before she could speak, I slid the folder across the table toward her. "Go ahead," I said. "Take a look." With trembling hands, she opened the folder. The first thing she saw were the photos, her and Brad walking into the hotel together, her arm draped around him like they were a happy couple. She let out a small gasp, her face going pale as she flipped through the rest of the pages. Phone records, text messages, hotel receipts, it was all there, laid out in front of her. She looked up at me, tears welling in her eyes. "Mark, Don't," I cut her off. "Don't lie to me. Not anymore." The room was silent for a long moment as she stared down at the evidence, her shoulders slumping in defeat. I could see the weight of her guilt pressing down on her, but it didn't move me. I didn't feel sorry for her. This was her doing, her choice. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I never meant for it to go this far." I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. "You never meant for it to go this far. Emma, you've been cheating on me for months. How exactly did you think this was going to end?" She wiped at her eyes, sniffling. "I don't know. I wasn't thinking. It just happened. Brad, he was there for me when I felt lonely, when things between us weren't right." My hands clenched into fists, but I kept my voice calm. "So it's my fault? Is that what you're saying?" "No." She shook her head quickly. "No, I'm not blaming you. I don't know, Mark. I'm so sorry. I love you, I do. I made a mistake." I leaned forward, my gaze locking onto hers. "A mistake is one night. A mistake is something you regret. This wasn't a mistake, Emma. This was a choice. Every time you met up with him, every lie you told me, it was a choice. And you made it. Over and over again." The words hung in the air between us, heavy and final. Emma stared at me, her face crumbling under the weight of her guilt and shame. "But I wasn't done. I've already filed for divorce," I said coldly. Her eyes widened in shock, but I continued before she could interrupt. "You'll get a copy of the papers tomorrow. I'm keeping the house, and I'm keeping the kids. You can visit them, but you're not taking them away from me." She shook her head, panic setting in. "No, Mark, please. Don't do this. We can fix this, we can work it out. I'll end things with Brad, I swear. I'll do whatever it takes, just please, don't take the kids from me." Her desperation was palpable, but I didn't care. She had made her choice, and now she was going to live with the consequences. "You should have thought about that before you decided to have an affair," I said coldly. "You betrayed me, Emma. You betrayed our family. And now, you're going to lose everything." She broke down, sobbing into her hands, but I felt nothing. This was what she deserved. For months, she had been lying to me, sneaking around behind my back, and now she was finally facing the consequences of her actions. "I'm sorry," she cried, her voice muffled by her hands. "I'm so sorry, Mark. Please, just give me a chance to make it right." But it was too late for that. There was no going back. I stood up, looking down at her as she wept. "You need to leave," I said quietly. "You can come back for your things later, but for now, you need to go." She looked up at me, her tear-streaked face full of disbelief. "Mark, please. Go, I said firmly. I'm done. She hesitated for a moment, as if she still couldn't believe this was happening. But then she stood up slowly, grabbing her purse from the couch. Her shoulders were slumped, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She looked like a woman who had just realized she had lost everything. Without another word, she walked to the door, glancing back at me one last time as if hoping I would change my mind. But I didn't. I stood there, arms crossed, watching as she opened the door and stepped outside. The door clicked shut behind her, and just like that, she was gone. I stood there in the quiet, the weight of everything that had just happened settling over me like a heavy blanket. The house felt empty, hollow, like the air had been sucked out of the room. I had won. I had taken back control. But why didn't it feel like a victory? I sat back down on the couch, staring at the now empty spot where Emma had been sitting just moments before. I should have felt relief. I should have felt triumphant. But instead, I felt nothing. The truth was, as much as I wanted to destroy her, to make her pay for what she had done, there was no satisfaction in it. I had imagined this moment for weeks, her begging for forgiveness, me walking away without a second thought. But now that it had actually happened, all I felt was emptiness. I had spent so much time planning my revenge, focusing on the betrayal, that I hadn't allowed myself to feel the pain. The hurt. The heartbreak. I looked around the room again, at the pictures of our family, the memories we had built together, and it hit me all at once. This wasn't just about Emma's betrayal. This was the end of my marriage. The end of the life I had built, the life I thought was real. And now, I was alone. I buried my face in my hands, the weight of it all crashing down on me. I had won the battle, but the war had left me broken. The house was quiet the next morning. Too quiet. I woke up early, the sunlight filtering through the blinds, and for a moment, I forgot everything that had happened. But then it all came rushing back, the confrontation, the divorce, the emptiness. I rolled over in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to summon the energy to get up. Eventually, I forced myself out of bed and made my way downstairs. The bags were still by the door, a reminder of the chaos from the night before. I would have to deal with that later. For now, I just needed coffee. As I sat at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee in the early morning quiet, I wondered what Emma was doing. Where she had gone. Part of me wanted to reach out to her, to check on her, but I pushed the thought away. She wasn't my problem anymore. I had to focus on the kids. They were all that mattered now. The days after Emma left were a blur. The kids came home from their grandparents' place, and I did my best to keep everything together. I tried to make things feel normal, but nothing about our life was normal anymore. Every morning I woke up to an empty house, a house that felt too big, too quiet, without the constant rhythm of Emma moving through it. I didn't talk to her after she left. I couldn't. The divorce papers were filed, and we communicated only through our lawyers. I had asked for full custody of the kids, and she hadn't fought it, at least, not yet. That was the one thing I felt confident about. I knew I was a good father. I knew I could take care of them better than she ever could, especially after everything she had done. But as the days stretched into weeks, the weight of it all started to bear down on me. The anger that had once fueled me was fading, replaced by something else. Something darker. I told myself I had won, that I had taken control, but the truth was, I didn't feel like I had won at all. I was exhausted. The kids sensed something was wrong. They were quiet around me, careful. They didn't ask about their mother, but I could see it in their eyes. They wanted to know what had happened, why she wasn't coming home. I didn't have the heart to tell them the truth, so I kept up the pretense. I told them she was working through some things, that we were figuring it out, that everything would be okay. But it wasn't okay. And deep down, I knew it never would be. One evening, after I had tucked the kids into bed, I sat alone in the living room. The divorce papers were sitting on the coffee table, unsigned, waiting for my final approval. I stared at them for what felt like hours, unable to pick up the pen. I had thought that once this was over, I would feel free. I would feel like myself again. But all I felt was hollow. I thought back to the night Emma had left, the look on her face when she realized I knew everything. The tears, the pleading. I had been so sure of myself then, so certain that I was doing the right thing. But now, I wasn't so sure. I poured myself a drink, trying to shake the feeling of unease that had settled over me. Maybe this was just what happened after a marriage fell apart. Maybe this was normal. But it didn't feel normal. It felt like everything I had ever known was slipping through my fingers, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I took a sip of whiskey, letting the burn distract me for a moment. But it didn't help. Nothing did. A knock at the door startled me, pulling me out of my thoughts. I wasn't expecting anyone, especially not at this hour. I stood up, feeling a sudden wave of anxiety wash over me as I walked to the door. When I opened it, I wasn't prepared for what I saw. Emma stood on the porch, drenched from the rain, her face pale and gaunt. She looked like a ghost of the woman I had once known, her eyes hollow and full of something I couldn't quite place. She wasn't the confident, defiant woman who had walked out of my life weeks ago. She was something else entirely. "Mark," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I need to talk to you." I stared at her, my heart pounding in my chest. Part of me wanted to slam the door in her face, to tell her to go back to wherever she had been hiding. But something in her eyes stopped me. "Come in," I said quietly, stepping aside. She walked into the house, dripping water onto the floor, but I didn't care. I watched her closely as she stood there, shivering, her arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold herself together. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know I don't deserve to be here, but I didn't know where else to go." I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. She looked around the living room, her eyes landing on the divorce papers on the coffee table. "Is this really happening?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Are we really over?" I swallowed hard, feeling a lump rise in my throat. "Emma, you made your choice. You cheated on me. You lied to me." She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I know. I know I did. And I'm so sorry, Mark. I don't know why I did it. I don't know why I threw everything away." I stared at her, my chest tightening. This wasn't the confrontation I had imagined. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She wasn't supposed to be here, broken and remorseful. She was supposed to be the villain, and I was supposed to be the one in control. But seeing her like this, it was breaking something inside me. "Why are you here, Emma?" I asked, my voice barely steady. "What do you want?" She took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she wiped at her tears. "I want to fix this," she said. "I know I messed up. I know I don't deserve it, but I want to fix it. For the kids, for us. I don't want to lose everything, Mark." I shook my head, the pain in my chest unbearable. "You should have thought about that before you had an affair. You should have thought about that when you were sneaking around behind my back." "I know," she whispered. "I know I can't take it back. But I love you, Mark. I never stopped loving you." Her words hung in the air between us, and for a moment, I didn't know what to do. I had spent so long imagining what this moment would feel like, how I would tear her apart with the truth, how I would finally make her feel the pain she had caused me. But now that she was here, now that she was begging for forgiveness, all I felt was numb. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again," I said quietly. She nodded, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "I understand." We stood there for what felt like an eternity, the rain pounding against the windows, the sound of her quiet sobs filling the silence. I wanted to be strong, to tell her to leave and never come back. But something inside me had shifted. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just sad. Finally, I spoke. "Maybe we can try," I said, my voice barely audible. "For the kids." Her head snapped up, her tear-streaked face filled with a mixture of hope and disbelief. "You mean that?" I nodded slowly, unsure of what I was even saying. "But it's going to take time. A lot of time." She took a step forward, her hand reaching out to touch mine. "I'll do whatever it takes," she whispered. "I swear, Mark. I'll never hurt you again." I didn't pull my hand away. I didn't know if I believed her, but in that moment, I wanted to believe. I wanted to believe that we could fix this, that we could find our way back to the life we had before everything fell apart. But life, it seemed, had other plans. The next morning, I woke up to an empty bed. The house was silent. I called for Emma, but there was no answer. Panic set in as I got up, searching the house, my heart racing. I found her in the bathroom. The bottle of pills lay on the floor beside her, her body curled up in the corner, motionless. I dropped to my knees, my hands shaking as I reached for her, but it was too late. She was gone. And just like that, my world collapsed. I had wanted revenge. I had wanted to make her suffer for what she had done to me, for the lies, for the betrayal. But I never wanted this. I never wanted to lose her forever. In the end, I had won. But it didn't feel like winning at all.